I mean, I would just say, would you rather have some control or input on your destiny, or would you want someone else to outline that for you? And if you're in the category of the former, then I suggest that you get involved.
Welcome to a bonus interview edition of Your Daily Detroit, recorded on Friday, February 22nd, 2019. I'm Jared Stays, and today we're going to talk a little about Detroit in 2030 and how we keep Detroit's nascent progress moving. This is an interview with someone who has been very involved in the city. He's also the chair of the Detroit Policy Conference later this week, put on by the Detroit Regional Chamber. That man and my guest is Dennis Archer Jr., and we caught up at his restaurant, Central Kitchen, next to Campus Martius. Let's just get right into it. Dennis, welcome to Daily Detroit.
My man, thank you very much for having me.
So looking through this lineup, and we'll put a full list up on dailydetroit.com, there are a lot of big names, but what are the ones that you're most excited about? I mean, obviously, Dan Gilbert, folks like that, everyone knows them, but what about this conference are you most excited about?
Well, I think this will be the first time since her election that Governor Whitmer will be able to sit down in a fireside chat sort of environment. She's coming off of her first State of the State address, and this will be in advance of her putting forth her first budget. And so I think it will be very interesting in a Detroit-centric environment to understand the role that Detroit plays in her plans and the plans that she has for Detroit. There are a lot of issues that are important to us. The roads, we know, are chief among her concerns, and they're great import to us here in Detroit. Automotive insurance, obviously, is a big deal for us. Dan Gilbert will also be touching on that because as he looks to hire young talent to come into Detroit, people want to have vehicles. The rate that we pay to insure our vehicles here is appalling. And so I'm really excited across the board. I mean, well, we at the Chamber have been talking a lot about civility, and it's very interesting that if you look at, for instance, the James brothers, Lauren and John Jr., who are second generation in the auto supplier business that their father started, they are diametrically opposed as it relates to their political leanings, with Lauren being very Democratic and left-leaning, and as we know, John Jr., who ran for the United States Senate as a very conservative African-American Republican. So to have them on stage talking about how they can be so diverse in their thought but get along as brothers and as business partners, I think is going to be incredible. You mentioned Dan Gilbert, and while we see a lot of Dan in the press, very rarely do we kind of get a chance to see Dan unplugged. And so this is a chance for he and I to sit around for a half an hour or so and just kick it and just talk about things that are important to him, ask him questions that are relevant to the vision of our conference, which is Detroit 2030. And so what does the Lieutenant Governor, what does Dan Gilbert, what does Mayor Duggan, in their minds, what does Detroit look like in the year 2030, and what do we have to do today to ensure that we can achieve that vision?
Why do you think it's important for younger folks to pay attention to this conference, especially people under 40? You don't necessarily think of people under 40 as being interested in the nuts and bolts of these kinds of things. But in a lot of ways, especially down here, the resurgence is kind of driven by younger folks, and a lot of companies, all the major focus for them is to attract younger talent. So why should somebody who's on the younger side of the spectrum pay attention to this?
I mean, I would just say, would you rather have some control or input on your destiny, or would you want someone else to outline that for you? And if you're in the category of the former, then I suggest that you get involved. And this is a great way and an affordable way at the Detroit Policy Conference for people to come and in one room in one day understand not only what the big name business and political leaders, what their vision has in store, but we've got a number of younger people that are their peers that will be on stage doing the same thing. We mentioned the James brothers being on stage. But it's not just them. We've got a number of other young folks. Josh Luber, who founded StockX, who's not 40 yet. I don't even know if Josh is 30 yet. If he is, early 30s. But Josh will be talking about how he created a tech startup here in Detroit that has blossomed into really the darling of the tech economy in the country. And everyone's looking at what's going to be next from StockX. And so he incubated this wildly successful company, hiring Detroit people, having the headquarters be in Detroit, creating another facility in Corktown. and really creating a new economy for young folks and for the world.
One of the reasons I think you're such a compelling chair for the conference is that you have found success in Detroit on multiple levels. On the marketing side, we are sitting here in Central Kitchen and Bar, which has been able to last through when you've seen a lot of restaurants open, close, things like that. As somebody who has been an active participant in the city, especially last few years in business, I know your marketing agency has been around for a while, but visibly a lot of people know Central, right? That's what they see on the street. What are some of the things that you have noticed that have been key, and what are some of the things that that you look at as challenges that we need to address, and maybe through policy to kind of keep this ball rolling?
Well, I think a couple things. I think anyone's success, whether it be large organizations like Quicken, even if you look at our chamber, who has about an 80-person staff, to the restaurant here where we have about 50 people on staff, finding, hiring, and retaining great people and great talent is going to be the key to us being successful as a region. And if we can't do that, all the other investment is all for naught. And so we have not been challenged here at Central, for instance, in terms of there being a dearth of talent. Heretofore, we've had great success in identifying and hiring great talent. As we sit here today, I just met a wonderful young man who came in very professionally and wants to come work here. And so because of our reputation, because we've been around for 3.5 years, we get that sort of individual trying to come work here. But if you go back to what we talked about earlier in terms of car insurance, schools, because the young talent that comes here, they're eventually going to find a partner, and that partnership may want to have children, and those children are going to have to be schooled. And so at some point, we're going to have to fix our educational system as well. We also can't have people getting priced out of living in the city of Detroit. So I think it's very important, while yes, I happen to be involved in a project where we're building apartments right downtown. Detroit's 139 square miles. And so myself and my partners, and I encourage others to look at making investments in the neighborhoods, because I think that's where the younger people are going to be looking to go. They want to go somewhere that's more organic, not something that's quickly manufactured. And so I look forward to talking about that at the conference as well. And I think that is both the opportunity and the challenge. The challenge is, making sure we can fix the schools, making sure auto insurance rates go down, making sure that from a hospitality standpoint, we have enough outlets for people to participate in. But all of those challenges are there are opportunities as well. There are opportunities for investments from an entrepreneurial standpoint, and there are opportunities for people to expand their horizons from the patron standpoint.
Well, and I guess finally, as you know, some of these issues we've been wrestling with for a while. I mean, Detroit schools, that isn't a perennial issue. That's something that's come over and over again. Car insurance, I've paid high car insurance for the last, 20 years I've lived in the city of Detroit. How do we motivate people or wedge people in or do something to stop repeating the same story, right? So what can people do listening? What could leaders do to make it so this conversation actually starts to turn gears and actually results in that change with the schools, as opposed to coming back here 5 years from now and we're saying, well, we still need to address the schools? What do you think could actionably change between now and then?
Well, look, let me say this. I wish that I had a crystal ball or a magic wand and could tell you what needs to be done to fix the schools. I think that that's a huge problem. There's a capital problem. There's parental participation issues. I mean, there's a lot of issues in addressing the schools. Just like there are a lot of challenges. It's not as easy to just say, hey, we're going to demand car insurance rates go down. There's a process that has to happen. What we can do, though, as people that vote and choose to participate in the political process, is hold people accountable for what they say they're going to do. So the people that elected Donald Trump, for instance, I was not one, they're looking for him to erect this wall. I am one of the people that voted and helped out significantly Governor Whitmer. She said she's going to fix the damn roads. We're going to hold her accountable to fixing the roads. I provide those two examples just to illustrate what we can do is to hold our elected officials accountable. And that's from the city council level, the mayors, whether you're in a big city like Detroit or a small town like Canton, throughout southeastern Michigan. We have to participate in the process, and we have to hold people accountable. And if I can say lastly about participating in the process, how direly important it is for us to participate in the census that is coming up in 2020. A significant part of our program will be helmed by Mayor Duggan and a panel to talk about why the census is important and what the city is doing to ensure that we count every citizen in the city of Detroit. It's so important to the funding that we get. And so I look forward to hearing from that panel as well.
Thanks for listening to our conversation. If you're going to be there, the Daily Detroit team will be at the Detroit Policy Conference this Thursday, and you can find out more about that at detroitchamber.com/DPC. If you like the show, don't forget to subscribe free in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever fine podcasts are found. And, of course, it's the end of the week, so thanks are in order. Thanks to the fine folks at Podcast Detroit, our spirits advisor, Nuri Gojai, Randy Walker, Sven Gustafson, Cheyenne Nosarini, and our sponsors this week, Milo Digital and Bamboo Detroit. Also, to our Patreon members, thank you. I'm Jairus Days. Take care of each other, and we'll see you around Detroit.
You're listening to the Podcast Detroit Network. Visit www.podcastdetroit.com for more information.